Hey folks, Wild and Willie Wordsmith here, coming at you again. Well, it's been a few days. It is Earth Day. Yay! 422 is also my anniversary. 10 years. Can you believe it? Some woman crazy enough to put up with my crotchety ass for 10 years. That's another subject. Probably address that in tomorrow's post. Right now, well, it's fresh in my noggin. Oh, wildandwoollywordsmith.com, Barbary Allen at barbaryallen.wordpress.com. Sorry, gotta get that out there. Not that anybody's reading, but hey, somebody might. Point is, um, we're hearing about this, trying to open the country back up and open the country back up, et cetera, et cetera. And well, it's ridiculous for 100 reasons, 1,000 reasons. All of them, all those thousands are dead, or deaths. But I guess you gotta, well, you can't be surprised. You gotta remember is that, as much as you don't want to believe it and you want to dismiss it, you've heard the rhetoric that it's better for a few people to die rather than have the economy go down. And you see, they keep buzzwording this whole economy thing. The economy only means shit to the top 2 or 3% of motherfuckers out there. The rest of us out here working, trying to get by on whatever little we got, working with small businesses, the economy, that's some far off distant place for rich people. That's who's freaked out about this, okay? And you can tell by their rhetoric when they're talking, when this Lieutenant Governor of Texas is talking about people would rather die than have this, so their grandkids could have a good economy, rather than have their grandparents. Well, maybe it's because you're shitty grandparents. Fuck. I certainly would love to have my parents back here to be grandparents to my kids, and I'm certain they wouldn't want to sacrifice one moment they could have had with my kids for a fucking economy. But what that tells you is the foot dragging early on, that wasn't by accident. They have the number crunchers, they have the lawyers, they have the bean counters that have made it clear that they've counted up. They made some pretty good estimations about who's going to be lost, how many will be lost, what time of year they'll be lost, etc. They got plenty of models. And they looked at the beans and they looked at the models and they realized that, and I'm certain they overlaid the Electoral College with those fucking models. And they looked at the Electoral College and said, you know what? Overall, we gain in the Electoral College. Because, see, those places that are solidly red and there's no chance of them going anywhere, well, they don't care if they lose 10% of that population. They still have a majority. Doesn't affect them at all. Now, in places where there's maybe a little more mixed bag, a little more contested, the models show that people living in big city urban areas will suffer more than those out in the rural areas. And if you look at the demographics, who lives out in the rural areas? Mostly white folk. Mostly white folk. And just about all rural areas are majority white. So they looked at those models and said, well, you know what? Even if we did lose 2 million motherfuckers, they'd probably help us in the Electoral College because those smaller places would be back up and running quicker because they'd have lost fewer people. And, the fewer people to count in a place that already had fewer people to count doesn't make the count harder. And their rhetoric has made it very clear that they know that the more people that vote, that hurts them. So if we were to lose 1 million people, the only reason they started getting worried at all was because it was going to be 1 million old people. And think about this now. To reach old age, yes, there are some poor old people in this country, but the majority of old people that live to be into their 80s, 90s, 100s are rich. You have to have some sort of affluence, at least middle class. Yes, I know there are exceptions, but I guarantee if you look at the averages, most of the people that live a long life, have decent health care, have decent social net, probably aren't on welfare and what have you. And you put all those numbers together, and they've probably, and again, think about the majority of people being born 80 years ago in this country were white. So it stands to reason the majority of the people that live to 80 would be white. Now, The children born today, when they reach 80, it will not be a majority white. It will be a majority mixed, other, everybody else. I mean, the white will probably still have the largest slice of the pie, but they won't have a majority anymore. But that wasn't the case 80 years ago. So it's easy to assume that the majority of people over 80 are white. And so for a moment they got a little scared. And maybe that's why they decided that a 2 or 3 week tamp down would do enough to really help out those rural areas, but wouldn't be near enough to help those urban areas. And that's why there's a push to open back up. Okay? Now, they didn't design this disease. This is a naturally occurring disease. But they saw it. They looked at the models. They saw the suffering that could happen. And then they realized, in fact, they realized that there was going to be suffering. So either going to be a little, medium amount, hell of a lot, or good God Almighty, that's just, everybody's suffering. And they realized that as long as they kept it down below everybody's suffering, even if it got up to good God, that's a lot of suffering, it might help them in 2020. And that's really all they care about. And so they looked at ways. And that's, like I said, that's why they're pushing to go back to work. They know now that all those rural areas are caught up. All those, or they think. I think they're going to be surprised now that they realize that California had cases that, well, let's see, let's do the math. If California had somebody die from the disease on February 6th, and let's say they had the disease for 21 days before they died, that runs roughly around January 16th that they must have caught it, or thereabouts. And let's just say that the person that they caught it from hadn't just got it. Okay? In fact, they must, since they're not showing up so far as a death, they must have got over it. So what if they were at their 21st and last day of being virulent? Okay? That's Christmas Day. That's Christmas Day because the person that died on the 6th didn't leave California for the previous 21 days. So they caught it. Or maybe they left for Christmas. Or maybe somebody came over at Christmas. And where did that person come over from? Probably local from California, which means that person at Christmas probably got it in California too. Which now we're talking December 5th, December 10th, December 15th. It was already in California. And we've heard rumblings that it was here maybe as early as November. That as early as they first found it, that since, the world wasn't already in lockdown before they found it, it was already here. It was already on the west coast of the United States. I mean, because, let's face it, Seattle's death, pins it as having been in here by February. But, yeah, the idea that this might be a conspiracy, they didn't start the fire. But they grabbed a bellows once they saw the fire was there and started pumping on it. Okay? And that's why they want to reopen, because they know it will cause even more damage to the big cities. But I think this might just backfire. It might just backfire. Because I think this is going to do a few laps through this country. It's going to be back in the fall, if it leaves at all. And now I'm hearing that this may be something that we just call the new normal. May be every year we will have the flu and COVID season. It won't just be the flu season. It'll be the flu and corona. They'll have to deal with both every year. Every year we're going to get a new strain of corona. Now we're not just going to be getting flu shots. We're going to have to get a flu shot and a corona shot. And we all know what happens with the vaccine. Well, that's also if they manage to come up with a cure, because what a lot of people don't realize, all these glad-handing about they're going to come up with a cure. This is COVID-19. They've got at least 3 of these COVIDs, if not many, many more. Got one for you guys. They've never come up with a cure for a COVID disease. Ever. It's never been done. If they come up with a cure, it will be the first time in a COVID-type disease. So we may just be figuring out a way of how to treat it, keep it from killing folks. That may be the best we get. And that takes tests and that takes trials. Because we got to figure out what works and what don't. So every year we're going to have our flu shot, and we'll get a shot for last year's coronavirus so that we'll at least be protected from the go back around. Again, that's if they come up with a vaccine. So, all right, Wild and Woolly Wordsmith, Barbie Allen at barbieallen.wordpress.com, wildandwoollywordsmith.com. Sorry. Happy Earth Day. See you next time.